it's a place where there's a huge importance placed on how people look, who they are with, the things that you see in the media about how throughout there's an association between body image, worth of an individual. I was put on my first diet when I was 13. That caused me to always feel not as pretty as everybody else around me. I need to prove how smart I am.
Society's version of worth, and then there's your version of your own worth.
To this day, I just get exceedingly angry in a family setting. Anybody comments about weight, because of all the things that we have to talk about, you have to fucking talk about my ass. Why would I think that I'm not worthy of love just because I'm not a size whatever is in fashion now? I don't even know.
Welcome to the show, Sara. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I want to begin by asking, what's your origin story? What's your background? And what makes you, and does that influence, where you are today, who you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from Spain. I grew up in a smaller city of around 140,000 people. And I was very, very fortunate and very privileged to live in a very warm environment, in a family who absolutely loved me and absolutely wanted me to thrive and do lots of things. And I was very encouraged to pursue my interests and to do the things that I like to do. But also in very typical 80s style, I was pushed to, do more and be a very good student and all of that, which, to be honest, I never had a problem with. And but my parents always, impressed in me the importance of continuing to do well if I wanted to enjoy the liberties that they were giving me. So that's how it all started. I was someone who had a bit of a different family to my friends, because my dad was a merchant sailor. So he used to work 6 months at sea and then come back. So I was mainly with my mum and my grandmothers. So, very matriarchal type of upbringing. And they're all lionesses. So I was always, with people who I could look up to, that were independent, that they were secure, that, they always told me I could do anything I wanted. But also, I am a product of my parents who, came from a society where there were the swing 60s and the revolutions of the 70s. So they were completely forward thinking, but they lived through a dictatorship, which only came down, I think it was the year after I was born, or at least that's the year of our constitution. And so they were definitely the type of people to impress the importance of that liberty and independence, which is, come a long way with me, because I am very fiercely independent, and that's one of the things I do value. But on the flip side of that is that back then we didn't really have the access that we have nowadays to other things. So Spain had been relatively, cocooned from external influences, and yet we were, like I said, me growing up in the 80s and 70s, very suddenly opened up to everything that was happening around us. For me, that kind of reflected into being in a society where everybody is able to openly comment and criticize on certain things, particularly the home where I come from. It's very judgy. And it's a place where there's a huge importance placed on how people look, who they are with, what they do, what they don't do. It's very traditional in that sense. So there was this whole, pressure cooker of being a smart child who is definitely encouraged to be smart, but on the other hand, having all of these external influences about, how the world perceives you, which is not your brain, it's the other things. And again, coming from that kind of environment, you very clearly start picking up on, the things that you see in the media, the things that you see in TV, about how throughout there's an association between body image and worth of an individual, which is quite tricky.
So growing up, I mean, that's a lot for anyone, let alone a child or a growing or young adult to sort of receive from, I guess, immediate family. And then, of course, like, you look at media and everyone else basically also says the same thing. And suddenly, as you said, like the pressure cooker builds in your mind, right? So if you think about body image, what does it, how does it affect your mental health? What's the connection that you saw yourself experienced between what they were saying about your body image versus what you're feeling in your mind and the effect they had?
It is a tremendous effect, because the first thing I needed to focus on were my grades, and reading and learning and learning English and doing things. But at the same time, you have this thing where, I think I was put on my first diet when I was 13. And I could see in my mom, the person that was physically stunning, someone that had a body dysmorphia issue, where she was constantly commenting on things that were not right, or this and that, and how, I should lose a bit of weight and that kind of thing. So it suddenly meant, at least for me, that the balance came off kilter. I started putting, a lot more value into my brain, because obviously the physical side I couldn't really manage so well, in the sense that I'm not built to be a very dainty, thin person.
Right.
And so that caused me to always feel not as pretty as everybody else around me. And while that's incredibly vain, it's an incredible part of, not building your whole self in a balanced way. Because as much as it is important, and I'm very snobbish in that sense, to have a working brain, you also want to have a set of balanced self-worthiness that comes from, I am kind, I'm empathetic, I love people, I love my friends, I have a body that takes me places and lets me do things, it breathes, it moves, it's not just there for consumption when it looks good according to society in a swimsuit. So it became a very skewed vision, because I felt out of control in how I looked physically. So my whole banking of my self-worth was like, I need to prove how smart I am. And I think that is in itself another way of building yourself up for failure, because the brain is also going to fail at some points in your life.
Because you're trying to compensate, essentially.
Exactly.
Because
and
the beliefs that you've been told that you have to look this way, and the swimsuit example that you gave, right? But actually, you should be happy with what you have, and it doesn't matter.
Precisely.
Right?
Precisely. And I think that, when... fortunately, I overcame some, what is it called in English, when you are a bit full of yourself because you're smart. I did overcome that, and I became a much more humble person, and I've never felt the necessity to be the smartest person in the room, but I've always felt the need to prove that I was smart and I was to be trusted with what I was doing, which... like I was saying, the brain sometimes fails you. Sometimes you are the victim of external circumstances, like when you're made redundant.
Right.
And so the first time that happened to me, it was a complete cataclysm under my feet, because it had never happened to me. I had never been told about how to deal with something like that. Ultimately, every company goes through restructures and things like that, but you can't but feel that is your fault, that if you had done better, you wouldn't have been made redundant. if you don't know this, you can't rationalize it and help yourself.
Yeah.
So what would happen to me is that I went like, oh fuck, I've absolutely done this to myself. I'm not as clever as I thought I was. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I must be shit. And because you don't have the other leg of the table to hold you up, you know, call it spirituality, or call it your believing in your health routine, or whatever it is, then you come crumbling and you hit yourself in the face in the ground. So that's not a great way of becoming, you know, fully realized.
I think there's a really good point there, right? Because the self-worth is extremely important, regardless of who you are, whether you're smart or not, or you're pretty or not. Everybody's pretty in their own way. Everybody's beautiful. And I think there's the society's version of worth, and then there's your version of your own worth, right?
Yes.
And of course, what normally happens is, you know, society expects you to follow their definition of worth, like swimsuit or whatever, smart, you know, because you've gone to Oxbridge University or wherever else, right? So you must be successful.
Yes.
But if you didn't do any of that, and if you don't look this way, then you're not smart, or you're not pretty.
If you don't fit any of those very narrow categories,
right,
people don't know where to put you.
So did that actually have a effect on your relationships with your family? But then, you know, fast forward when you are, you know, friends, partners, and so on.
It didn't have an effect with the relationship with my parents. I think my mum always had that issue with her physical awareness, and that kind of was passed on to me. I've had the opportunity to, you know, work a lot more on that. Fortunately, my dad never cared about any of that. My grandma did, and to this day I just get exceedingly angry if in a family setting anybody comments about weight, because of all the things that we have to talk about, you have to fucking talk about my ass.
Right.
It's not the thing to talk about, Grandma. I love you, but, and you know, she's I love her to bits. She can't see very well anymore, so we have a Facebook portal where I can talk to her very often, and she can see my toddler. And she will still make comments like, oh, is she a bit strong? Or has she lost weight? It's like, you can't see. We're looking through a freaking screen.
Right.
And you're commenting about a 3-year-old. What's going on in your brain? This is nuts. This is not, you know.
Yeah. I think it's I guess it's a generational gap,
exactly,
right?
But it makes me feel so anxious, and you can see by my body language, because I'm really tensed just thinking about whenever it happens, that it makes me not want to talk to her as often as I would really wish to, because I know that's some sort of conversation that's going to happen. It also has reflected in, you know, making some errors in relationships. We all do that, but, you know, I probably could have got out of those relationships earlier if I didn't feel that, you know, my brain was carrying the whole weight of it, because I probably didn't think I was going to do better because I wasn't, you know, physically attractive enough. And so that's really not a great example. And again, why would I think that I'm not worthy of love just because I'm not a size whatever is in fashion now? I don't even know.
Right.
So it is very tricky, but mostly the key relationship that is here is with my own daughter, because no matter what's happened to me, what my job is now not to pass any of these onto her. She needs to know that she's beautiful in the face, beautiful in the heart, beautiful in the brain, you know, beautiful when she farts. She needs to know that she's a fully lovable
That's
person.
what makes you human, right?
Exactly. And it's also my job to make her not be a dickhead, but you know, she cannot feel that she's lacking because she's not this or she's not that.
Yeah, makes sense. We talk about, you know, like family and peers putting pressure, but then there's also social media.
Yes.
Right? Pressures that you see extremely out there at the moment versus maybe, you know, when we were a little bit younger, when we were like early 20s, social media was non-existent. But now it's in your
We had
face.
IRC that didn't have images.
Right.
If you are below 40, just Google it.
Yeah. What's your view on the social media of today, and how does it play a role in that?
I think it's very interesting because I see it as both a huge hindrance, but also giving you the ability to carve and find your tribe. So when I was growing up, I was not dainty. I've always been quite clumsy as well, but I was always very interested in fashion, and I love fashion and I love makeup in the way that it is a means for self-expression. It's not always about feeling pretty. It's always about expressing a way that you're feeling today, and it could be pretty, or another day it could be grungy, and another day you could look like someone else entirely. So it's about that both fitting and stepping out of any box that you could be in,
because we don't have one emotion every day, right?
Yeah.
We have different emotions every day.
Exactly. So to me, there's nothing sadder that someone has to put a suit on every single day to go to the office. When I'm down, I put a yellow jumper. When I know that I have to make a certain impression, yes, I'll put a blazer, but might be purple, or you know what I mean. So for me, the ability to see that social media is changed, so that there's a lot of people in the body positivity movement. There's a lot of people that are championing plus size, mid size, love at every size, because ultimately we all lose in this argument. It's not just the plus size people that need to be celebrated. Everybody can, because on the other spectrum you have people that are quite slim and would wish to be a bit plumper. And sorry, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you know what I mean? You're not always in control of your physicality.
Yeah.
And I think that social media has made it a lot easier to, am I not fitting here? But okay, well, there's a huge goth community here, or, K-pop
whichever community, yeah.
That in my small town, when I was growing up, I didn't have any of that.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have all the Love Island bullshit and trophy body, which no matter how many successful businesses the Kardashians have now, they came from, showing absolutely no value to anyone. And that's not bad, but it's not in my list of priorities how things should come.
And I think that's the whole point, right? What sort of like the social media paints as one picture is not applicable for everyone.
Exactly.
Right. It might be applicable. Some people might actually like that. Some people like wearing whatever they're like, blazers, for example, but it's not for everybody. And it's not, we should not be judging everyone with the same measurement stick.
Yeah.
Because there isn't one.
Yeah.
And we should be humble and kind and accepting regardless of
Yeah.
who you are, what size, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or where you look, color, race, gender, like we can go on, right?
Exactly. But we should also, we've got thousands of years of building image, and we still believe that what we see is the truth. When, Victorians used their equivalent of Photoshop. Now anyone can put on a filter, but we've never been equipped to go and look at an image and go like,
this is not real.
It's not real. We have been led to believe that when you see a film or the photo of a model in a photo shoot, or, someone snapping a selfie in a beach, that's reality. It's really not. It's never been. But when you don't see how that sausage is made, it's very difficult to go like, yeah, actually, I could do that too. Yeah. It's just a lot of pins and stuff.
I mean, I guess that's the social media, right? That you just see the positive.
Yeah, an extremely curated version of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you were, facing all those, comments, and then, the you said you had to get out of some of the relationships in the end. Did you have any help around? Did you talk to anyone about, this is how you feel about your body image or your mind that is causing all this, craziness, and you just wanted people to just accept the way you are versus define the way, they should accept you?
there was one of the relationships where I did try to talk to a lot of people about, is this normal? And I don't know if it is because I was in the UK at that point, where people are not necessarily very forthcoming in their opinions, where I just felt that was something wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. And I was trying to get external points of view to, validate the crazy. Because you get to that point where you go like, you've dented my confidence to such a degree that I don't know if I'm the crazy in the village, or, this is all part of the gaslighting and emotional abuse that you have subjected me to for many, many years. And that's not right. But I didn't know or realize at the time how to get professional help. And it also gets to a point when you are talking to your friends about like, oh, I don't like my body, I feel really fat and that kind of thing. Of course your friends love you and they don't care about that. So it very quickly becomes a bit of a pity party rather than, you know what I mean? And you go like, why am I talking about this? Of course you love me. There's nothing wrong here. They're not the issue. It's everything else that you can't have a candid chat with. That is the issue.
Yeah. And I think the professional point is very important. Again, there is probably... I come from India. There's a stigma around like, oh my God, you're seeing a counsellor. You're like mental. You should go to one of those mental hospital. And it's like, no, you look after your body, so you look after your mind.
100%. And this is something that I realized when I probably had anxiety way before I realized it could be anxiety, and definitely before I was diagnosed with anxiety. And I, at that point, was signed off from work, and the anxiety had been because I wasn't doing really well at work according to my standards. Because this is the other thing. The standards that a brain gives you are ridiculous in compared to the standards that you have for other people. You're a lot more empathetic of circumstances. You're a lot more able to work with people have. But for myself, at least, it's ridiculous. So when my brain has these standards that I'm not able to meet, it means that I'm spinning. And when I spun out of control, that's when I finally went and worked with a therapist on cognitive behavior therapy. And I also worked with a life coach. And between the two of them, they gave me a ton of resources, which means that if I have anxiety again, and I've had it, I am a much better placed person to manage it. I know what medical resources I have. I know what non-medical resources am I going to need. What, how I need to maybe look after myself a little bit more with more sleep, or just taking care of that internal child a bit better that you've been neglecting. So it is hugely important that if you are not able to get to that stage yet, at least talk to someone that can help, because it was my friend that said, just have got to go and talk to someone.
Yeah. I think one thing that I want to point out here is the imposter syndrome, which is, am I good enough?
Yes.
Am I good looking?
Yes.
Am I,
Yes.
smart enough as well, right?
Yeah.
And it just plays in your mind, and, it affects your daily routine, work or non-work. And then you start not performing because you're building up yourself to it, right?
Yep.
And your brain just shuts down, and you don't want to do anything, and you don't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's when you start sort of like spiraling down to the very bottom.
Absolutely.
And that's when you I think the trigger is really what you need to understand. And then hopefully if you have the self-consciousness, which obviously comes with a lot of practice, mindfulness, meditation, lots of tactics, then hopefully you can see those triggers and then go ask for help.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah. I just kind of wished I had been able to start that kind of work 10 years before I did, because I would have definitely saved myself a lot of pain if I had known that those resources are available and they are extremely crucial to, long-term happiness, really.
So when you're going through a process of change in the positive, so you're trying to recover from all the feedback that you've gotten, or pointing fingers like, oh, you're this or that, and hopefully you're in a journey of recovery in a way. What does optimism play a role in all of this?
I think it's incredibly powerful, and I think that it's like that book, right, about luck. Are you lucky, or just accepting of opportunities that come your way? I think ultimately I'm definitely a person that errs on the optimistic side of life, but what that brings is that sometimes my enthusiasm can, steamroll over other things, and I have to pause, and I've learned to just like take a minute and not always react. So I think optimism is a force for good, because ultimately it allows you to see the best in everybody. It allows you to feel that regardless of where you're at as well, there are other things propping you and other things that you can go back and rely on. And I think in every situation, there are many ways of looking at things. If you have a more muted way to come at it, that's absolutely fine. But the likelihood for my type of personality is that if I approach something with a more enthusiastic, optimistic view, I'm more likely to get more out of it than if I'm like, ugh, can't be asked.
Yeah, absolutely. So this podcast is about young people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that social media and all this information on the internet has done is actually created this, we talked about the image that you're supposed to have versus what you have, right? And actually has led to some serious issues with, diet, like anorexia and body image, and, people losing extreme amount of weight just to look certain way. Or just not accepting, the way they are. And in some cases actually has led to quite serious damage like suicide.
Yeah.
So if there was a young person thinking, I hate myself, I hate the way I look, I hate the way I'm not pretty, what would you say to that young person?
I think it's a very hard road to tread, because everything that comes from the inside and all of those feelings, while they may not be reflective of the truth, are still valid. However, what we have to remember is that we're our worst critics always, and it's always that quote about, you see a person and they think that they've got it all made up and they're living an amazing life, and someone wants to be them. You are that to someone else, and it never crosses your mind. So I would say that if you're ever in a situation where you feel like you are not worth of being in this world because of how you look, go and talk to someone. It's very, very difficult, but you definitely are worthy. You're definitely a person of value. There is so much good in you that you can't get out if you can put for a second visions and feelings of low self-esteem because of things that you haven't even built yourself. It's all external inputs, and it's all absolute shit that you should not be dealing with, but you can't avoid because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So you are not the problem, but you are the vessel to find a solution.
Yeah.
Everybody should be here and should be enabled and celebrated for who they are.
Yeah. I think it almost is that you're reconciling between what they say and what they expect versus what you expect from yourself.
100%.
And then, you know, figuring out what works best for you. Because again, like there's no one solution to all the problems and everyone's problem, right? Because
Yes.
what you might be facing might be totally different to what I'm facing and so on, right?
Exactly.
So it's like figuring out what works for you. What's that reconciliation journey for your own self?
And also, very importantly, find what brings you joy. Find what brings you joy.
What did you find? What was joy for you?
Well, joy for me is things like friendship, and I love the arts. For me, going to the theatre, to the ballet, to a gallery, I love that. I love colours. Like I said before, if one day I am feeling a bit meh, I'll just, you know, get all the glitzy stuff out. There's no such thing as best in my case. You have it, you wear it. And so finding what brings you joy, it's a very safe path to building yourself little by little, because otherwise you will be full of those negative inputs that, you know, don't have a place in a fully formed person. I did a workshop last year with Professor Tanya Tar, who is a behavioral scientist, and the workshop was about burnout in the workplace. However, there's a framework that she shares that is called the House of Wellbeing, and the House of Wellbeing has 4 rooms, and each of those rooms needs to be full to at least a point to make you happy. And one room is work, another room is family and friends, another room is kind of exercise or activity of whatever kind you do. And I think the 4th room is things like spirituality and creativity and that kind of thing. And when you are in the deepest, saddest thing, it's because all of those rooms are completely depleted. And finding ways of, you know, finding small parts of joy to fill those rooms with will be a very, very not easy, but a much more defined way than trying to deal with everything external. So just those moments of joy are very, very important.
Yeah, it's important to find that balance between a lot of things, right? And sometimes that can be also a bit of a pressure on someone that, I have to spend time with family and friends and work and this and that. But it's not about, you know, tick box exercise.
Exactly. Maybe it's not your friends and your family. Maybe it's, you know, listening to a podcast by a professor from a university. Maybe that's your time. You just have to find what brings you joy. Maybe it is being in nature with a bunch of cows. That's what does it. It doesn't matter. Just, you know, as long as you're not harming anyone or anything, just find what brings you joy and make you fill you up with that energy. Things don't change dramatically night to day, but small incremental steps make huge difference when you look back.
Speaking of energy, I'm getting a lot of energy from you. I love the conversation, but we have to, you know, end it somewhere. So one of the last questions I ask every guest is, if you were young again, what advice would you give to yourself? So dear Sara, finish the sentence.
I would say to her it's such a cliche. It's like that episode of Drag Race at the end when they show the picture of themselves when they're little. What would you tell little Bob? Well, I would tell her to, you know, continue charting her way. I think having parents is clear that they have some ideas of how things should be, and then you come out and you're an entirely different person, and it is difficult because you are exposed to these things, but there's absolutely no harm in doing things the way you think they need to be done, because you will work it out, you will find it, you know, you learn very quickly as well. So I think I would definitely say to stay true to that nature and forget about the expectations. You know, you're going to come out the other way anyway, and it's not going to be by fulfilling the expectations of anyone else but yours, so mine. And I think that there is that key element of trust. You have to trust yourself with your decisions. just make the damn decision, get on with it. If it's wrong, you'll fix it. Otherwise, that's continuous self-doubt and second-guessing is a lot of wasted energy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It was not only inspiring to hear your journey and, hearing you accept the way you are, who you are, but also it's very brave to share it with the world. So thank you so much.
I think we're all a work in process, and that's very important to acknowledge. No one is I'm done. I'm a fully completed individual. So acknowledging that we'll keep on learning, we'll hopefully be less stupid than we were yesterday is also part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank you so
coming on the show.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.